Hello, my name is Daniel Weil. I'm a partner in Pentagram. We are here in London. I'm sitting in a studio in the building that used to be a famous art school, so it's very appropriate that the World Chess Championship is taking place here. World Chess has invited me to address my relationship with chess, as I've been involved in this particular venture since 2013. I call this talk Chess Moves, and it is not just a straightforward conversation, because I will, like a chess player, make my moves in a manner that is only predictable to those that watch, not predictable to those that watch. Only at the end, everything should become clear. So the first thoughts I put together were that what I thought chess was like today, and I hope that all the moves I make might actually bring them all together and make this list clear. So chess is a millennial game, a game of thrones, a dialogue between two sides, an argument between adversaries, light and dark like day and night, set out on the board like architecture, play the pieces like an orchestra, movement in space and time like dance, beginning, middle and end like a story, the checks and balances of creativity. So the history of mankind could be described by through human cultures in a journey between predestination and free will, chance and purpose. The Egyptian pharaonic game of Senet, that was around 3000 BC, from 5000 to 3000 BC, was a journey into the afterlife with moving pieces along a board that moves through the throwing of a knucklebone. So, in a way, it's a game of chance and a game of destiny. The Romans expanded the odds by creating a dice that had 20 sides, and through new technology, they invented the dice that we know today in the 1st century. But by the 7th century in India, a game had developed that was the first game of free will, when two sides can actually take control of their moves and they are not controlled by any element of chance. That game progressed into Persia, and this is an example of early pieces of the 9th century, and it gets disseminated throughout the world through the ancient Islamic empires. So there are 4 parts to this conversation with you, and I hope it's a conversation and there's somebody listening. And the 4 parts are inspiring the moves, where I will be talking about my early relationship with chess as a young person. Imagining the moves is my experience as a student and a young designer and teacher. Making the moves, my experience as a professional, and finally living the moves, my experience with world chess. So inspiring the moves, I was born in the 1950s in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and by 1968, in 1971, I was very fortunate that I consolidated my love of chess with the experience of being a spectator in the Fischer-Petrosian candidates tournament in Buenos Aires. It really gripped the city. Everybody fell in love with chess. Bus conductors, nurses, doctors, everybody talked about chess for the month during the spring in 1971. It was an extraordinary experience being in a place where what I already had an early passion for had finally come to a very special a sort of local event that I didn't feel everybody had in them until that happened. But everything starts when this is the Encyclopedia Britannica that was my bedside reading. I used to take these very heavy books to bed. Particularly in book 5, it was the word chess. And under chess, I discovered the Lewis chessmen, that actually they are ivory carvings or tusk carvings that from the Kingdom of Norway of the 12th century, and they were found in a sandbank in the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. And the British Museum acquired them, and in 1831 they went on display. There are a massive amount of them. There are around 80 pieces, and they really grabbed my imagination. So when I was in 1968, I went to learn how to carve wood, and the first thing I carved was using the photograph from the Encyclopedia Britannica, this Lewis chessman. I didn't get that far. I think I managed 3, but it was a demonstration of how my passions were coming together. So then in 1978, following my graduation as an architect, I came to London to study at the Royal College of Art. And while a student, I really fell under the spell of Marcel Duchamp, like most art school students. And he was an amazing character and a very important artist in the 20th century, as he defined what we now call conceptual art. And I think he redefined the word artist. So for Duchamp, an avid chess player, he learned from his brothers. Chess was a sport, as he said, chess is a sport, a violent sport. So somehow these Muybridge locomotion images of 1877 must have really been a big influence for him when actually he did the portrait of chess players in 1911, and most importantly, the nude descending the staircase in 1912. And I'm trying to bring these references in because somehow they become an enormous catalyst to this notion, like for him, chess was about movement, like everything was about movement. And chess was central to his life, and it was actually the practice that he enjoyed the most. He was a very good player, so much that he played for France in the Olympiad, and he very easily beat every one of his artistic opponents. In Italian Straw Hat, he's playing with Man Ray, and with Dali, he's upside down, and with Man Ray as an old man. And then he is playing with John Cage, not a very good chess player, in Reunion, something I'll bring up later. So Duchamp even traveled to Argentina for 6 months to play chess, or that's all we know he went to do. For that reason, he invented his traveling set, and even to play postal set, he invented some rubber stamps. And at the bottom left of the picture is Boiton Valise box inside a suitcase, which became his portable museum, or portable gallery of all his work. That inspired me when I was asked, while teaching at the Architectural Association in 1985, to put together an exhibition and a publication. I called the exhibition Heavy Box, obviously inspired by the word box from Duchamp, but Heavy Box, in Heavy Box I showed the work I had done since graduating in 1981, and there were pieces of electronic design and observations about design and the nature of the context of design. I designed a radio in a bag to enhance the properties of electronics against what it was the restrictions of the mechanical world. It then extended it into a touch-sensitive clock on the left-hand side with the press studs enabled to change the time. And on the right is a clock, the one on the left is called Andante, and on the right, 100 objects. Again, a completely designed electronic components and clock. Radios, more radios, these are called, the one on the left is El Ultimo Café, and the one right, Cambalache, and they both refer to the idea of my Buenos Aires origin tango, and it's called 2x4 tango. And this one is called Muralla China. It's a tango from Astor Piazzolla, where the aerial is actually the structure that holds the battery, the circuit board, and the speaker. And that is the consistent element in these radios, is the geometry of its components that get rearranged, expanding on the freedom of the electronics to become a totally new language. The object on the left is called 4 boxes and 1 radio, and that takes the idea of miniaturization to its absurd end, as this object is 80 centimeters tall and it's made out of cardboard. And on the right is a hinge, a clock that has the numbers in front of the movement. And this is Volta, one of the other components, like hinge, part of the still life group of objects, where I wanted to readdress the observations from art from reality back into reality. So this was Heavy Box. So the publication was very much physically very similar. If I go back, you can see there's a checkerboard in architectural scale, could be a Renaissance floor, and the box, everything in space. And in the publication, you have the same layout, the box on the left with the same peepholes I had on it, so people could see the objects from the back as well. And the box cannot contain an architectural scale, so it is a checkerboard. And that checkerboard inside what is called the light box, so it's Heavy Box and light box, light for light and for the means of, as you can see, this is a television picture, but it was the way design in those days shows its work, because we showed our work on light boxes as the work were shown in transparencies. So that checkerboard is a chessboard, and in one of the publications inside this light box, there is a sketchbook, and in the middle of the sketchbook is an instruction for a chess set, and that follows the famous Joseph Hartwig chess for the Bauhaus, that in 1924 it was produced for the first time, and the pieces are very simply designed so to show the moves on the board. As you can see, the X is a diagonal, so is the bishop, and so on. How the queen has the diagonal and the square, so you move the queen has the sphere on top, so you can move in all directions. So the knight has a square missing, so it represents has a little square section missing, so it represents the moves it makes. So all the pieces like that in 1985 did not make any sense to stay in design self-referential. So I came up with this idea of a ready-made set where the pieces do exactly the same. They show the geometry of how they move. The bracket is a 90 degrees, so is the rook. The bishop moves in diagonals from diagonal to diagonal, so it is the bishop. That's the switch. The queen is the hinge. It moves in all directions. The king is the lock and key, and a hook and a peg for the jumping knight, a bit more figurative in its representation, and finally the thimbles are the pawns. So, following, I was appointed professor at Royal College, and during my appointment I was approached and I joined Pentagram. So this is making the moves. This is showing how and why I am here talking about chess and how chess requires, or my participation, or my designs for chess requires to be understood through the experience I build, not through just the arriving to the project. So it's part of the moves that this is my preparation. So Pentagram is a very unusual organization. We are currently 24 partners. We meet twice a year. This is one of the meetings, and we meet in venues, one in the northern, in North America, and the other one in Europe, so the offices can actually gather. We've been in existence since 1972, and we are famous for doing many, many, many identities. Including the V&A. We are completely, one of our founding partners, Theo Crosby, was the architect of the globe. We keep on producing very important identities as required, and projects of all nature of design in 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions, and even the full experience of design. We do anything from startups to very important and well-known television stations, and also we face the future with organizations like the Media Lab. So when I joined, I was lucky to start a series of projects, and this is that actually inform, and I selected to somehow touch the idea of chess, either through experience or through scale, but it always is important that these references are sometimes tenuous, but sometimes very strong. So in this case, for the Pet Shop Boys, I designed a CD case. That's the first CD case that was not transparent, and here they are standing on them as if they were a platform or even a slightly disassembled checkerboard. I worked for Swatch, where I designed the packaging for the new range of watches that were non-plastic. For Irony, totally recyclable and reusable. It can be reused for spectacles or pencil case. So there's always the afterthought, the thoughtful aspect of design is very important, like the thoughtfulness in chess. I was the art director for the lab in Milan. For Swatch, I designed their time ship in New York. And we even had a bar where you could order your watches that arrived through compressed air. For boots, I redesigned the interiors to try to balance health and beauty and provide a sense of well-being at entry. For mother care, I worked in creating a closeness to the brand. I worked with one of my partners, John Rushworth, first in recalibrating the identity, and we did a series of new products called All We Know, and this is an example, and it's the playful use of the dolly for a soap that stands. Then I redesigned a baby bottle for them, where the teat is off-center, and because it's off-center, it prevents air to be swallowed by the baby, and it prevents colic. Also a steam sterilizer, and with silicone slippers, as I call them, that actually help the parent not to contaminate what has been sterilized by gripping and assembling the baby bottle with these finger slippers, the green silicone objects on the bottom tray. For something more grown-up, I worked for Krug, for something very popular to something much more exclusive. And in a way, that is also quite important because it gives us a bigger picture, like a picture that we need on the board. The world has a lot of parameters, and things are popular, things are exclusive, things are expensive, things are cheap. And I think design works and needs to work with all of those parameters. So I did this chiller sleeve for a Krug bottle, very much a shield, and pre-chilled and keeps the chill in without getting the bottle wet when being poured. Michael Beirut and I rebranded Benetton and created a series of sub-brands that actually allowed them to express the incredible range of products that they had, that the over-democratic proposition of United Colors of Benetton was preventing to be understood by the customer, all the way to stitching, appropriate and brandable stitching on the jeans. So with Michael as well, we rebranded United Airlines, and this was a long journey, and I think, like chess takes its time, this took 15 years, and many projects, premium checking areas, lounges, the seat for first class, the seat for business class, all amenities, amenity kits by the hundreds, even the cutlery. And the cutlery, every airline always wanted to have cutlery to actually be representing their qualities. And I had this thought that the rat tail, this traditional format, rounded format with a central line of cutlery, could actually become the rat tail meets the airplane tail. So this is the angle of the tail on the bottom left of the cutlery, as you can see, is off center, but keeping the tradition of cutlery. With John Rushworth, we rebranded GWR, Great Western Railway, very recently, and I worked on the implementation of the logo and the interior of the trains, and a very interesting opportunity to work in Brunel's Paddington Station, redesigning the ticket office, where the ticket counters really are the presence of the train. And we even rebranded the ticket machines. So in 2012, I was asked by the London Legacy, from the Olympic Legacy Committee, to think of a campaign. I came up with this idea of a chronoscope. This is a piece of an environmental piece that is, the line was created by Naresh Ramchandani, one of my partners, that E20 will become a living, breathing piece of the city. And today, in 2018, it is reality. And it's interesting that I can see something that was proposed to be an experiential proposition, where there is an A to Z map wrapped around the bottom, and all the areas are pointing down, the new areas are hanging down, and the areas and the arrows are orienting you towards different destinations. You can see in the oval white is the Olympic Stadium. You can even see the metal element there that looks like a pretzel. And the River Lee, which is a tributary of the Thames, you can see here saying to the Thames. So it was a layer of how people will get to these places, and it was shown to be on the sides what the future will look like. And an idea of the scale, by having people next to it. We were asked to do coffee shops in Italy. It's like Coles to Newcastle, maybe, but this is an Italian, very important Italian company called Autogrill, starting to think that Starbucks, that now eventually in 2018 has made its arrival in Italy, would actually be a problem for them. So we had to create an idea of how to preserve the Italian way, which is a quick pick-me-up with the idea of sitting down. So this is the result, with this bright colors as representing that moment of pick-me-up. telecoms in Germany in 2000. This is a 2000 telecom. Before G3, telecom had a vision of what the world would be like. Did not succeed, but I still think that these environments where personal experience of devices remain the norm now is still relevant. From telecom to shoes, this is a pop-up store for Aldo Rise in Selfridges with a detail of a female shoe. And from the shoes to a client that I had for a long time that now is called the Sculpture Foundation. And this was their base in London. And these doors are the actual representation of the map of the site in which they are. They are an outdoor sculpture park, and the contours represent the contours of the map. And the wood is wood that we recovered from the site after a storm and made the doors out of them. And that's the interior he gave the drama to exhibitions through this rigging in the ceiling that looked more like a theater for art than actually an art gallery. And next door, a photographic gallery for the same client. And this is a project that took me a long time and working with 15 curators, and that's where my understanding and a new developed passion for archaeology happened, because this is the journey of the archaeology of the land of Israel and is the archaeology wing in the Israel Museum, and it starts from prehistory through all of the archaeological periods and historic periods. This is the Canaanite, this is the Israelite biblical time, the Roman time, Byzantine time, and Mamluk time. So it ends around the 12th, 13th century. So it's from prehistory to the 13th century as a chronological sequence. This is just to add, coming from a religious subject to the word Trinity. This is Trinity Square, and it's a work for a developer, but it's the work of trying to express what the future would look like from reducing the scale of the building to an accessible one. Those circular maps you can see there are 5 meters in diameter. This is a vast place. It's like what I call the Temple of Neptune. It was a very exciting experience. I worked again with John Rushworth to do this. And that took me to also work for another developer for which I did a totally different idea. I had a thought of representing architecture not through models but through elements that looked like sculpture. So these are 3 sculptures of 3 different buildings. The one on the right is by Richard Rogers. So each one of them is used as a representation of the site. And I also gave them each a box, an architectural box that has the sculpture on the top, a location map, and inside this box there are drawers. And in the case of here, the mansion, they are these pieces in bronze are the flats. And the map, you can see the plan, and basically like a matter of scale, as if you're holding a chess piece, you're holding the whole flat in your hand as a representation of the sense of ownership or interest in the ownership. And finally, to end this is my impressions of London. And this is a map I did again for the developer, to actually present their sites in the context of the whole of London. Particularly in here, the developer is Clivedale, so most of their sites at the moment are in Belgravia, and eventually they will be in other places. And this gives them a sense of future, but gets a sense of the scale. So it is a big enterprise to actually do a scale model of this nature, impressions of London, but at the same time, it is quite a delicate and precious sort of detailing that is required. So, living the moves. Now we have arrived to the real important moment, and we are now in probably the end game. Okay, we've just been through the middle game, and this is the end game. And this is what Duchamp says. Not all artists are chess players, but all chess players are artists. And I must say, I agree. And John Rushworth and I, when we started the Identity, worked with fabulous clients, and they gave us that license to create the space within that mark. There's that space of the possibility of a three-dimensional journey inside this amazing mark. So it was launched in 2012. Part of the development was I was asked to think about the environments of the tournament. So these were my early thoughts about the tournament and how it would be. And it would be more in an amphitheater, a sense of drama. So to celebrate the sport of chess, because chess is a game of rational thinking and planning, but a game of massive emotions. Because if you ever play chess and you don't want to lose, and that is an extraordinary emotional journey, like any sport is an emotional journey. So then once I've done that initial thinking about how to create the drama, I was given the first task of doing the work for the Grand Prix in London. And then I came up with this thought that chess for tournaments is played in open halls, and the players can see each other. And I felt there was something not right about it, because when this is the first Grand Prix in Simpsons in the Strand, very appropriately there, as that's the most famous divan venue for chess in London, I felt that somehow there should be a bit more private experience, that every board mattered. Every board was a different experience. So I had thought about St. Jerome's picture by Antonello da Messina in his study, and somehow given a bit more area to be private to the players, and somehow this represented it very well. And then this is what happened. In the tournament, you have Dominguez and Giri playing, and you can see, they cannot see anybody else. But this is how the players behaved, and that was an amazing experience. Sorry, let me. So the players, in between moves, once they made the move, they go around and watch the other games. So there was this amazing dance, that allowed me to see something that might not be that obvious in an open hall, because they might walk away to actually keep their mind out of the game they're playing, because they know the next move. And it was an amazing observation. This is me taking a picture through the glass door. So it was a privilege to be part of such a small group of fantastic players. I got to know them, and I got to work in the next project, which is so I started to plan the next tournament, and this was going to be in the Beato. They thought they were going to do the candidates in the Beato in Portugal, so I set up this idea, this dream amphitheater for all these games to take place in, so for the candidates in 2013. But eventually it took place in London in IET, and we chose it because it had this wonderful amphitheater. It represented very much what I had in mind at the beginning, and we were lucky that we still could control the so-called cheating, technological cheating in 2013, to the point now it's become something a bit more difficult to achieve, but it was an extraordinary event. The players were very close to the audience. The audience had their iPads, they could read what was going on. And that's when my chess pieces debuted as the official chess pieces. You can see on the board there on the screen, once it changes, on the screen, how the games were followed at that point live in the studio and online for the first time. And this is a bunch of very happy players after the candidates are over, and obviously Magnus even happier probably because he won it. And they left me wonderful notes, having experienced something, and they all signed it. But it's really nice when Peter Svidler says, it's been thoroughly enjoyable playing in the atmosphere you created with gratitude. And then Levon Aronian saying, thank you for bringing an artistic touch to our game. Good luck in your future projects. I have stayed in touch, and Magnus's signature in there, and that's the medal that I designed for Magnus to wear in the ceremony. And they all signed the board, so I have it as a memento. So this takes me to the chess pieces that debuted in 2013. And these chess pieces, the first observation was that the green felt there is traditional, the green base and the green tradition from board games comes from the indoor of the outdoor. So this is England. Most of outdoor sports are played on grass and is green. And this is my assumption. This is a theory. But why do we have green base if the outdoors is not moving indoors for games? So this is the Victorian Age, where green has become the norm for the snooker, the billiards, the card tables, and the bottom, the underside of chess pieces. But first innovation was the idea of making them black and white. So I moved for the World Championship set, we have a black and white felt. So they are clearly not anymore parlor games. They're not for a domestic environment, they're for a championship. Now, this is the Staunton. Staunton set, 1831, is Staunton by endorsement. It was designed by an architect called Nathaniel Cook, who was the son-in-law of the owner of Jacques, the manufacturer of parlor games, croquet sets, etc. This set is neoclassical in nature, because Nathaniel Cook was an architect in the Victorian Age, Victorian period, and they are all neoclassical architects. So this is what I designed, and I kept from the Staunton set. And I improved a discipline. The architectural discipline of Nathaniel Cook was not represented by the craftsmanship that was provided, because I think to a degree the pieces still reflect another material, probably ivory or color or coral, that were the materials that were used pre-wood, before the wood was used. So at this point, I decided to make the discipline total of architecture. So you have a base, a shaft, and a capital. And the capital represents each one of the personalities of the pieces. And you can see there is absolutely a very disciplined approach to a similarity of the bases, because you don't get that. If I go back to the Staunton is different. And I don't know, there's a lag in the pictures, so I didn't like it. I probably just managed to ruin the whole presentation. Let me go forward then. Yeah, okay. The design, I also gave the idea that I wanted to keep the north and south grip, the opportunity that the pieces move and have a very comfortable way of being held, either from the top or from underneath. Now, this is the Staunton Angle, consolidated by Staunton as a thought for a professional player that needed to keep a very good strategic eye on the board. The pieces before that used to go up and down and didn't have a similarity, and they were quite tall relative to the size of the board. So this was established finally as a 95 millimeter high piece for the king. Now, as you can see, the diameters of the knight and the bishop are the same, because for value they have the same value. The rook is a bigger value than the previous two. The queen is bigger than the other two, and than the rook, and obviously the king is the biggest. So you establish the appropriate rational hierarchy through the diameters. Now, what you see at the bottom is what an architect sees and reads as a column in plan. These are Greek temples. So Nathaniel Cook is an architect, and he sees these plans, and he looks at the board, looks at the layout of the pieces. You can see 8 major pieces, 8 pawns, major, minor, and the one on the right is the Parthenon. So it's no surprise that this has happened, that somehow the Staunton line, the alignment, might actually represent the Parthenon. And that's why when actually the Elgin marbles were brought into the British Museum, the neoclassical fever was total. So the idea that Mr. Cook, our author, has looked at the Silenus horse in the Elgin marbles to make his knight is not unusual, but the connection that I'm trying to make is the total connection of an architect, a neoclassical architect, being drawn to it by the simplicity of looking at the plan and looking at the elevation of the pediment, the geometry given by the Staunton line. So this is a speculation, by the way, but I learned that from archaeologists. You have to speculate to learn and to bring this together. So why, if that would represent sort of copying marble, this is a piece I carved in when I was 17, and is an antelope. And there is something about this ancient archaic idea of the simple that really has influenced our modernity to a massive extent, that I thought it was more important to bring the sense of wood back into the piece. So I used what I had learned about carving to bring the wood, not a representation of marble in wood, to the chess set. So you can see the knight has a hoof, it's like a horse, while all the others look like columns. So this is the set as sold today. And then I designed a lot of things to extend the vocabulary of chess and start to bring it more to the everyday, to today. A table, this is the World Chess Table, and this is Magnus sitting on the World Chess Table, smiling. This is a leather board that we call the master board, and it's a leather board that is laser hinged, and it's printed, and it's really an amazing experience. It can be folded or it can be kept flat. So these are the fiber boards. And we brought color into World Chess, trying to bring a different quality of lifestyle and everydayness for today, as color is a very important part in our lives. And chess used to be red and white before it became black and white. We did a new size studio set, and it comes in a very nice bag. We did a series of paper boards trying to promote the idea of a much more casual approach to chess, a much more informal, and trying to bring people from outside chess, people that don't play chess, to play chess. And for that, I came up with the idea of paper chess, which is a self-assembly chess. We are lagging. It's an animation that we show here how the pieces get assembled, but if not, the slide will do. We're getting a bit of a... We lost the image? Do we have an image there? No. Okay, so basically it's self-assembly, and it really removes, I think the wooden pieces can be intimidating, even plastic pieces. They look like demanding. So the idea that a folded piece of card with a nice graphic presence could actually be more informal and more engaging. It enables people to feel they want to play chess as a game before they take on the bigger idea of strategy. So it comes in coffee bags, because I would love to see this paper chess to be played in coffee shops. It comes, as you can see, as a dark shade and a light shade, as opposed to two colors. It's the same color in two shades to actually do the black and the white. And this is laid out. Then it is what it would look like if it was on the outdoors. We're lagging. And we're way ahead now. This is way ahead. Okay, so it's an animation of something else, but I'll tell you in a minute. So we did an idea for matryoshkas as the value of the pieces could contain the next one. There is paper cards, playing cards, using the nomenclature of chess. After all, we really have eight pawns, so that keeps all the numbers busy. There are very few figures that we need to be invented. And there's a joker for the rook and the bishop. And this is chess at large, an idea of transcending the scale of the intimacy of the board by actually making the pieces move in space on request. So it could be two players playing in a small board, but by the time you can put these pieces in a theater, you could really you can really make this into a spectator sport that actually could involve more than one player. And then this takes us to my final presentation, which is called another scale, because it's called chess notes. And this has been the thought of many people. People have been trying to put music and chess together, not least in a performance called Reunion in 1968. Cage and Duchamp play on a pre-arranged electronic board, making funny noises and sounds. Somehow, always Duchamp predetermining what was going to happen. And we finally have introduced found a way and worked with two wonderful people, Ken and Adam, developing and creating the sounds and the music for this experience. And it's a means. Using sound is another way of transcending the limitations of the space of a board, the intimacy of a board that doesn't cover more than 5 centimeters per square, 40 centimeters wide, and somehow is for 2 people only. So once the sound comes, it transcends the scale and it creates a new scale. So I will, now that you will hear the game played on our Chess Notes program, Game 3 of Carlson and Caruana, and I will demonstrate it live while you listen to that. Oh, well, that was a short demonstration. So let's hope this works now. Okay, so. Has been somehow now, after the moves, I completed my moves, you understand a bit more what those moves were about, and I'm looking forward for you to enjoy one day the things that we have designed, and thank you very much.